Liz, how was your Thanksgiving?
Well, I had to have two. We had one Thursday and one Friday to kind of like keep groups small enough since my whole family's local. But, you know, family drama.
Sure.
Family drama. Because everyone's like, oh, it's the baby's first Thanksgiving. So everybody had to be overly dramatic about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why all the whiskey in the house is gone. Mysterious. How was your Thanksgiving, Case?
It was okay. We did a virtual Thanksgiving, so we did a Google Hangouts call with my mom's family, and then we did a Google Hangouts call in the evening with Karina's family. So that was nice. We finally got out our fondue pot that you got us for Christmas like 3
Yay!
years ago. And I almost set the table on fire, but we did end up having cheese, so that was good.
What is a Thanksgiving without a small house fire? I mean, seriously.
I mean, it's a tradition, basically.
It is. It's tradition. Set the house on fire.
God.
Welcome to This Is Lit, a podcast where we drink and talk about our favorite books. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey.
So raise a glass and let's get started.
Okay, Liz, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking Amaretto and Coke.
Amaretto.
It has been a very long time since I've had one of these because I haven't had any Amaretto in the house. But for our anniversary, my husband and I took the babies to my parents and then went to the liquor store. It's a very exciting anniversary.
Well, if it works, it works. I'm drinking a ready-to-drink Paloma. So it's tequila and grapefruit soda. It comes in a can.
Have you ever heard of it's a Jamaican soda, it's called Ting. It's grapefruit soda. And when we were on our honeymoon, my husband absolutely loved it and he would mix it with vodka. And that was pretty tasty, let me tell you. So it's on Amazon. So if you ever get on Amazon and find Ting soda, it's a great mixer.
Interesting. Yeah, I usually do the grapefruit vodka and Sprite. Same general principle. I think.
Same general principle.
Okay, so today is a special episode because we're tired and existentially depressed and just want this stupid year to be over. So we're not doing a book today. We're just going to talk a little bit about the books we've read already this year, what we're thankful for, and the books that we thought were the most important to us this year. So Liz, you said you have notes. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I took notes on my top 3 new books for this year. I'm not counting books that mean a lot to me that I have already read multiple times, like The Fellowship of the Ring, because otherwise that one would be on here. Mm-hmm. But these are new books I haven't read before. Obviously, again, The Fellowship of the Ring would be on here if we were doing old books that meant a lot to us. But these are kind of like our new books we got. These are the books that got me the most excited this year and like really kind of like were able to keep me engaged and distracted throughout all the craziness that has been 2020. Mm-hmm. And we have 4 more weeks before we're in 2021. So hopefully the curse will be broken in 4 weeks. But for number 3 of my top 3 is A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney. That one was the first in the Nightmareverse series. Mm-hmm. And L.L. McKinney is a local author. It was a book I had been meaning to read for a very, very, very long time because I originally saw that her first book was coming out on like local news and was like, wow, that book sounds interesting. I need to go get it. And then I bought it and then it sat on my shelf for 2 years.
Yeah.
The longer I live, the more I realize buying books and reading books are 2 different hobbies.
Definitely.
So I really liked it because I loved, like, 1, it was a local author here to the Midwest. 2, it was one of the first kind of like young adult action adventure books where the main character was a person of color. Because, you don't see that very much. And so it added a lot of interesting perspective and kind of, there's always the drama of like the teen superhero and their parents, but it added a whole nother layer of like danger to it. But mostly the thing I loved about that book was like the very Buffy-esque feel to it. I loved Buffy growing up. Because who wouldn't want to be like, yeah, I'm cute and sweet, but I will also kick your rear. Right. And I also love Alice in Wonderland. So it was really kind of fun to kind of like see how she took like the original intent of Alice in Wonderland and twisted it to fit her means. And I really loved that. Wonderland was the collective dreamscape of everybody. And we got to see in the sequels where it's like the dreamscape in Japan is a lot different than the dreamscape in America, and how those cultural differences make each different part of Wonderland different. So I really like the magic system that she had in there. And also too, really liked that the main character was bi.
Yeah. I think my number 3 book was actually A Dream So Dark, which is the sequel to Blade So Black. For a lot of the same reasons you said, Alice in Wonderland is one of my favorites. I've always been a huge fan of portal fiction as a general concept. Yes. So I love that. I love the main character. I think she's really unique, and I think she has a lot of depth to her character that you don't always get to see in these like chosen one stories. Which is really nice. And then I picked the second book over the first one because I liked the new characters that they introduced in the second book. I liked Oda Beth and her knight. And I liked, I like to see Chess back in this like more dramatic role and like what was going on there. I liked the Black Knight. I thought he was fascinating as a character. His like history with Addison was really interesting. So both of them were very good books, but I picked for my number 3 spot, I picked A Dream So Dark because of the more intense storyline and like the higher stakes, I guess. It got more interesting to me.
Yeah, it was, that whole series so far has just been chef's kisses, so I can't wait for the thrilling conclusion. January comes out in January. A Crown So Cursed.
Crown So Cursed. It comes out in January. So, of course, we'll be reading that book.
That's probably going to be a January, February book for us.
Definitely. We'll be reading it.
Because as soon as it comes out, we'll be like, okay, we need it now. Thank you.
All right. So what was your number 2 book then?
My number 2 book is one we actually did recently. It's Cemetery Boys.
Okay.
I finally had time, and now that I knew that it had a happy ending, I was able to kind of go back and spend the time with it that it originally deserved, that I didn't have the first time around. So I've read this book twice in a month. So it's
a good book.
It is. It's such a good book. It is such a good book. I know we did like an extra long episode about it, but it is just a book that it's like, it's an excellent coming of age story. It's also an excellent story about finding acceptance from your family. If you are a trans person, it's about acceptance and being who you are. And it's a good coming of age story, but it's also really nice to have like a coming of age story where the main character does happen to be a member of the LGBT community, but it's not about being LGBT. I mean, it's an aspect of the story, but the whole story isn't about that. It's about it's still this ghost adventure, transitions between genres so effortlessly and easily. And that's something that's really hard to do in writing. Like we go from cute, sweet date that just makes you squeal like a little fangirl to absolute horror movie in like 30 pages. And then we go to young adults coming of age, and then we go to high school drama. It just has so many genres involved, and the magic system is really good. And I really like how it was rooted in the Hispanic culture. And that was something that was like, this was the first major book I had read where the main character was Hispanic, trans, and gay. So I'm like, this is like, I didn't know that publishers would let that happen. and put it out into the mainstream without trying to put it in a niche genre. So it was really nice to like get a lot of that perspective and representation. And it was just such a good adventure story. So it was just really, really good. Again, it's really rare for me to like go back and reread a book within the same month that I've already read it.
Sure, for sure. Okay, so my second book is going to have to be Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. It's the sequel to Carry On, which came out several years ago. It was basically her answer to Harry Potter.
You have 2 sequels on your list.
Yeah, and Wayward Son was the follow-up to Carry On that came out. And the thing that was really nice about this book is that, again, it had queer main characters. It did that very interesting thing, which we're starting to see more of now that we did not used to see, where teenage heroes from fantasy and supernatural stories have to deal with the psychological consequences of the things they've gone through. So in the first one, Simon obviously had to fight against like the evil wizard, and like he's got PTSD and depression and he's struggling with it. And then Boz is there trying to help him get through it. And it's really messy emotionally, and they're like going through a lot of shit, but it's also got that very fun road trip vibe, which I love so much.
Yeah.
In books, and the Americana, and then, crossing the continent. That's very, very fun.
That book had a very supernatural kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Early supernatural.
Yes. But the big reason that book is on my list is because I really appreciate Rainbow Rowell providing it to us. Like Carry On was already a very good book and was like a queer answer to Harry Potter. But it just became more relevant this year as J.K. Rowling kind of dug her heels in on her turf bullshit and on her like exclusionary attitudes.
Dug her own grave.
So like, I mean, she's talked like that for years, but this year has been the year that she's been really like aggressively open about it. And it's been really hard as a queer trans person who grew up loving that book to hear the author of it say stuff like that. So having something like Wayward Son that embraces characters who are different, that embraces characters who are not just your traditional straight white protagonists, was really valuable this year. And I really appreciated it for existing. So that would be my number 2 book for the year.
That was a really good one. I liked that one. And I mean, who doesn't want a hot vampire boyfriend?
Right? I think we all do.
I mean, come on. That was a good one. But yeah, my number 1 is one you actually didn't read with me. It's Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I read that one with Allie from Story Eyed Reviews.
Oh, I'm like, why do I not remember this? I'm like, what?
Yeah, you were on your honeymoon. The fact that you remember your honeymoon at all is shocking.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Casey, that was this year.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. But no, Sorcery of Thorns was Margaret Rogerson's second full-length young adult novel that she has released. Her first one being An Enchantment of Ravens, which I have not read. But she hit her stride with this book. My goodness. I mean, the thing that originally endeared me to this book is that the main character's name is Elizabeth. And so like when Allie is like, let's read this one, I'm like, okay. Sassy brunette main character named Elizabeth. How could I resist? But it actually was an excellently plotted novel. Like it was like a perfectly cooked steak. There was no excess fat. There was nothing she needed to trim. Everything that needed to be in there was in there. There wasn't like, it was an easy book to read, and that to learn about the magic system, which is magic is held within the words of books and grimoires. So, and with her job as a librarian, she's basically a magic protector, secret keeper, even though she can't use magic like sorcerers can. So it's one of those that it's like you learn very easily about the magic system of this world, and there's not a lot of exposition. The way you learn about it is through the plot and how that progresses. And it was one of those that it's like the first 3 pages of the book started the plot. Like, you know, a tip they give new writers is always introduce your villain on the first page, which is, if the conflict is not starting, that's not where you need to start your story. But sometimes people have to do a little bit of expo before they get to that point. This book, page 1, the seeds are already starting to be planted. And it's just really, really, really good. And this was a book that used a lot of typical young adult tropes. Like the main love interest has a white shock of hair, but that actually is important to the plot. So it's one of those that it's like, that actually is a demon mark, which means he's made a deal with the demon, which is how sorcerers keep the magic in their family, as they kind of have a pet demon that they keep bound for centuries.
That seems ill-advised.
It is. So, but that's just kind of a mark of a magic user, is the white shock of hair. So it's like really cool to like kind of have that kind of like mini young adult trope, but there's a reason for it. Kind of like Elizabeth is taller than average. She's stronger than average, but you come to find out that that's actually a plot point too. It's not like she is a chosen one. It just kind of happened that way, because there's kind of like, you know how like we all breathe in dust in the air. Since she was raised in this library with all these magic books, she was kind of breathing in magic, and it just kind of, as she was growing up, so it made her taller and stronger. So it was one of those that it was like, there's a lot of young adult, you know, heroine hero tropes, but there's a plot related reason for all of them, which makes me not mad at them. And also too, male romantic interest is a bisexual guy who had a, you know, who had rejected advances from a prince. And like all the characters, even kind of like the side ones, like the people you'd see as sidekicks, have their own side stories that are fully developed and fully formed and have their own arc. So that whole book was just wonderful. I loved that book. I read that book in one night. Like, that was such a good book. I cannot recommend Sorcery of Thorns enough. That's definitely my #1 new book for this year.
Well, I will have to check it out. It sounds interesting. I'm not very in the habit of going back and listening to our episodes, because generally speaking, I am on them when they are recorded. So I'm like, after I edit it, I'm like, it's out there. So I haven't listened to that episode of yours and Allie's, so I'll have to go back and read that book. It sounds
we talked for 4 hours about that book and cut it down to 2.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it comes as no surprise to anyone who has listened to our podcast that my #1 book for the year is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. It is a phenomenal book. Liz said a lot about it already, but I'll just go into more depth about it again. Main character who is trans. The author is a non-binary trans person. The characters, it delves really deep into Hispanic culture and like genuine, legitimate Hispanic practices, and all the Day of the Dead stuff. It's definitely got like Coco vibes. If you enjoyed the Pixar movie Coco, it's got a lot of similar vibes to that.
If you feel like crying, go watch Coco.
I love Julian, the love interest. I think he's very, very interesting, and very relatable as like kind of a hot-headed, overprotective sort. And I really love him. I love the family members. I love that this is a queer book, unapologetically queer book about queer characters, but it is not mired in tragedy. Those of you who have listened to our podcast any number of years would know, I'm sure I've mentioned several times in different episodes before, that I really enjoy the genre of supernatural fiction, both in the context of reading and in the context of viewing. And the genre is inherently queer. Gothic literature especially is inherently queer and delves into queer topics, especially in a time period before that was allowed. So it's very interesting, historically speaking, to see it happening much more openly in a modern supernatural novel. And it's also very refreshing, because even in 2020, we are still underrepresented and still see characters be queer and then have an unhappy ending. That's not uncommon. Burying your gays is a trope for a reason, and it still happens on the regular. And I'm definitely not talking about anything specific, Castiel. I'm just saying that, maybe, maybe it would be nice to have characters who get happy endings and whose dads look at them and say, I'm proud of you and I accept you for who you are, especially those of us who haven't had that. So Cemetery Boys was not only a wonderfully well-crafted story, it also meant something on a deeper level. And I am firmly of the belief that storytelling is intrinsic to humankind. We have to do it to understand ourselves and the world around us better. So books that transcend just being an entertainment and do something meaningful and make you feel something meaningful or teach you something about yourself or others are necessary for us as a society. And the fact that this book has been weeks and weeks on the New York Times bestseller list tells me that we are going to see positive changes in the world of fiction and in representation because of Aiden Thomas. And so it really is more than just a book. And I mean, if you let me talk about it, I'll go on and on for days and days, but I'm sure no one is surprised
Yeah,
after how much I rambled about it in that episode.
Yeah.
That it is my number one book of 2020.
And you brought it up before. It was really nice to get a novel that just had a happy ending. No strings attached. Just a happy ending.
2020. In 2020,
we need happy endings.
I'm not interested in unhappy endings. If you're going to give me an ending in 2020 where everyone ends up dead because you want to be edgy, I don't want your book. I don't want your TV show. We're all living through a hellish time. I am waiting right now for a text message telling me that my grandmother is dead. I've been waiting for it for the last 3 hours. I'm not interested in stories that are edgy and sad. I want to see happy endings, especially for queer people, especially for people of color.
Oh, yeah.
Because we never got those before. And this is not the year to be wasting our time with a bunch of sad bullshit.
And it's so unsatisfying of an ending to put time and emotional effort into characters just to give them a sloppy ending. I'm not talking about anything specific supernatural.
I feel like we've got enough time. Me starting a new podcast about bad narrative writing.
I will join you. New podcast. If you come up with the name, put it in the comments.
We don't have time for that. The point is stories like Cemetery Boys that are narratively satisfying, but also have happy endings and also allow for characters who are at the cross section of lots of different minority groups to be seen and to be spoken about and to be honestly portrayed is so valuable, not just for the teenagers that are in the age group the book was written for, but for all of us. And I'm very, very thankful for that book. I cannot wait for Aiden Thomas's next book.
Yeah. And if there are any teenagers listening to us, I am telling you right now, adulthood is not any easier. You just realize everybody is faking it. We're all deep down inside still teenagers.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
But so those are our top 3 books each for this year.
Yeah. So clearly you guys need to go read Cemetery Boys because it was on my list. It was on Case's list.
Yeah. I think that's the takeaway here.
I guess that's the book of the year then.
Yeah, that is This Is Lit book of the year.
Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas.
Lit book of the year. That was not
Cemetery Boys.
And it's very, very good. So I will continue to recommend it to people. Next year, I think we have some more to look forward to. I know Aiden Thomas's next book comes out next year. If I believe it is a kind of Peter Pan retelling.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. I know.
Casey McQuiston's One Last Stop, which is the time traveling. It's Tristan.
Time traveling ghost lesbians.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. Then of course we've got the final book in the Alice series, A Crown So Cursed, in January.
And rumor has it Maureen Johnson is finally going to finish Shades of London.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll get that final.
That would be nice.
Maybe, that would be nice. Maybe.
Maybe.
Who can say? I don't know.
Maybe I'll finish my novel and get it published. Who knows?
But other than books, something that I'm very thankful for is the opportunity to do this. It's like, you know, we don't have like the hugest follower count. We're not like McElroy's or, you know, Night Vale or something, but we do have some dedicated listeners who follow our podcast. And I really am thankful for you and for the people who have continued to support us in making this, because we're both passionate about reading. We're both passionate about stories, and we love to talk about it. And this is an opportunity to do that and have some kind of socialization with a friend, especially in a year when we're not getting to see our friends in person as much as we would like to. So, you know, Thanksgiving was a couple days ago, and I am thankful for this podcast and for the listeners and for Liz as a co-host.
Yes. And of course, I am thankful for you as well and your lovely wife. You guys have been really good friends to me. I'm also very thankful for this podcast and I'm also thankful for our loyal listeners who have stuck with us as we've started to learn and adjust new ways, because like our videos have come quite a long way.
Yeah.
Since we started with, you know, our first video was Carmilla and like with the babies sitting in this office.
Yes.
So yeah, we've come a long way. So thank you for sticking with us through the learning curve. I'm sure there will be more to come. But yeah, these stories we read to know we're not alone. And in this year that has been filled with so much trials and tribulations and tests of our courage and patience and camaraderie as human beings, you know, listening to other people and hearing their stories is how we get our empathy and our sympathy for each other. It's how we learn to care about people other than ourselves. And, you know, we live multiple lives through reading. So clearly we're very passionate about it. I'm a teacher now, so I'm like, everybody read your books. But yes, I'm also thankful for my lovely husband who watches my two beautiful girls while I do this. And I'm also thankful for them. They were born this year, Casey.
God, yeah.
They're not a year yet.
Yeah. No, it's been this year's been a roller coaster, and this has been a nice point of consistency within just weeks of unknowns and things. So I appreciate our listeners for sticking with us. I appreciate you for tolerating a little bit more of a chaotic schedule in the last few weeks.
Because the world has been utter chaos in the last month.
Yeah, it really
absolute chaos.
But we hope to get back to normal episodes next month. We are reading Tolkien's Letters from Father Christmas is our first book for December. Yes. And then our
Letters from Father Christmas
will be Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis.
It's Besties Month.
It's Inklings Month.
Inklings Month. Yay, Inklings.
Whether or not we do a birthday episode for me this year remains to be seen. It will really just depend on how things go with COVID and with our own schedules. But do expect those two books from us next month. And then hopefully we'll get back to a regular recording schedule in January.
Yeah, you guys may see some changes from us in January. We don't know what they are yet.
We're working on it.
But we're going to try and figure out what we need to do to get us on a more consistent schedule.
Yes. But as always, we love to hear from you. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we have a website, litliteraturePodcast.com, where you can follow us for updates on what we're doing right now.
If you're feeling extremely generous, we do have a Patreon. It is Patreon/thisislit. But we also understand that the world is crazy right now. So if you can't financially support us, we would just appreciate if you told somebody to listen to us or watch us on YouTube. So if you are watching on YouTube, hit the little subscribe button.
And the bell. Ring that bell.
Ring the bell. Yay.
Well, thank you
to get a bell.
For watching. I know this was kind of an odd episode and a little bit shorter than usual, but we're so glad to have you. We're so thankful for you sticking with us through this year that has been absolutely crazy, and we can't wait to see what comes next year. So
yes.
Thank you so much. And as always, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For more information, visit us at litliteraturePodcast.com or check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. And remember, too much work and no vacation deserves at least a small libation. Cheers!